We're tackling Plato's Phaedo, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride through the philosophy of the soul, death, and the great beyond.
A classic for a reason. It's Socrates on his last day on Earth, debating with his students whether the soul lives on.
Yeah, and talk about intense. He's about to be executed, sentenced to death by poison. But he's weirdly chill about it, don't you think? Almost like he can't wait to see if his theories about the afterlife pan out.
It's pretty powerful imagery. I mean, if you knew this was your last conversation, what wisdom would you want to pass on?
Right. For Socrates, the big Clogans couldn't wait.
Exactly. Phaedo isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. It shows us how Socrates actually lived his philosophy, even when facing death.
So if you want to ace that next philosophy exam, or just sound incredibly wise at your next dinner party.
Stick around.
All right, let's jump into one of the most mind-blowing arguments in Phaedo, the cyclical argument. Socrates says that everything exists as part of a cycle.
It's everywhere you look, right? Day turns to night, things heat up and cool down, we sleep, we wake up.
And he takes that same logic and applies it to, well, life and death. Death follows life, so logically, life must follow death, right?
It's a powerful image, even today, that death isn't the end, just another transition in a much bigger cycle.
Okay, but hold on tight, because Socrates doesn't stop there. Get ready for the recollection argument.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like you just knew something, even if you'd never learned it before?
Like a gut feeling or a sudden flash of insight, seemingly out of nowhere.
Exactly. Socrates would say that's your soul remembering knowledge from a past life. He even uses this example. A slave boy with zero education solves a super complex geometry problem.
Like the answer was already there, inside him, just waiting to be unlocked.
Makes you wonder what knowledge we might already have within us. Like we're all these hidden geniuses just waiting for the right question to spark our memory.
Now, this next one can feel a little abstract, so buckle up. It's the argument from affinity, which explores the very essence of the soul.
Okay, hit us with it.
Picture a candle. The flame is like the soul, invisible, unchanging, and the melting wax is the body, constantly changing. The flame stays the same even as the wax transforms.
Right, I'm with you.
Socrates argues that the soul, like that flame, is connected to something eternal and unchanging, something he calls the forms.
Forms?
Yeah, think of them like perfect blueprints. Perfect beauty, perfect justice, perfect truth. They're reflected in the physical world, but they exist on a whole other level.
Okay, so like that breathtaking sunset we were talking about earlier, the sunset itself is beautiful but fleeting. But the idea of beauty it embodies,
Yeah.
that's eternal, unchanging.
And because our souls can grasp these eternal forms, Socrates says that they too must be eternal.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. We get so caught up in the physical world, but Socrates wants us to look deeper, to consider that there might be this whole other realm of existence that's invisible but eternal.
Right. But this is philosophy, right? We need a little healthy skepticism, and that's where Simmias and Cebes come in.
Ah, the voices of doubt. Even Socrates' star pupils weren't afraid to challenge him. What were they worried about?
That maybe the soul, even if it's this amazing, incredible thing, simply dissolves upon death, like smoke disappearing into the air. Poof, gone.
I think that's a fear a lot of us can relate to. Even if we believe in some kind of afterlife, it's hard to wrap your head around what that actually means.
Exactly, and that's what's so cool about Phaedo. Socrates doesn't shy away from these doubts. He faces them head on.
And he does it all with this incredible sense of calm, wit, and compassion. So how does he address their fears?
Well, he uses this really clever analogy of a lyre, the stringed instrument.
I'm falling.
Simmias suggests that the soul is like a harmony produced by the body. When the lyre's destroyed, the harmony's gone. So when the body dies, the harmony dies with it.
That makes sense on the surface, I guess.
Right, but Socrates points out a big problem with that logic. If the soul was just a harmony of the body's elements, it couldn't exist before the body, like he talked about with the recollection argument. It'd be like music without an instrument.
Doesn't quite add up, does it?
Nope. And the way Socrates breaks down these counter-arguments is amazing. He's always calm, always respectful, even as he's facing his own death sentence.
It's pretty inspiring when you think about it. It reminds us that truth and understanding are more important than just winning an argument, especially when you're dealing with the big questions.
Speaking of big questions, did you know that Socrates wasn't always this philosophical giant?
Really? I'm all ears.
Before diving into the mysteries of the soul, he was actually obsessed with science.
No way.
Yeah.
Seriously.
He was like a kid in a candy store wanting to unravel the mysteries of the universe. He wanted to know how everything worked, the mechanisms, the fundamental laws behind everything.
A natural-born scientist. So what happened?
He eventually got frustrated, like he hit a wall. It's like he was being told how a clock worked when he really just wanted to know the time. He was after the meaning behind it all, not just the mechanics.
I totally get that.
Mm.
It's like he was searching for something deeper, something that transcended just the material world.
And that's what eventually led him to philosophy, the pursuit of wisdom and virtue.
It makes you think. Have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions, accepting explanations, without really questioning them?
It happens to all of us. Maybe it's time to channel your inner Socrates and dig a little deeper.
Absolutely. And speaking of digging deeper, Socrates believed that what happens to our souls after death depends on how we live our lives, right here, right now. Talk about high stakes.
He's saying this life is the training ground for the soul's eternal journey. And he paints a pretty vivid picture of what happens after we die, both fascinating and a little scary, if you ask me.
Oh, like what? Do tell.
He talks about this guide who leads each soul to a place of judgment, almost like a cosmic courtroom where our actions are weighed and measured. And based on that judgment, each soul is sent to a place that reflects their life choices. It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books, but with, well, eternal consequences.
It's both captivating and a little intimidating, right? Makes you think twice about the choices we're making each day.
What gets me is that even Socrates acknowledges that no one knows for sure what the afterlife holds. He's not claiming to have all the answers.
Right. But even with that uncertainty, he still encourages his students to live with purpose and integrity, always striving for knowledge and virtue.
It's a pretty powerful message, don't you think? That even though we might not have all the answers, we should still aim to live a life worthy of our own deepest aspirations.
It really makes you think about the kind of legacy you leave behind, not just materially, but like what kind of soul am I shaping through the choices I make every day?
Absolutely. And what I find so remarkable is that even when Socrates is talking about these huge ideas, death, the afterlife, the eternal soul, he never freaks out. He faces death with this incredible sense of peace and even humor,
Yeah, totally. It's like he's not afraid at all.
He even describes the physical effects of the poison as it courses through his body. And he does it with the sense of, like, playful curiosity. Like he's observing a fascinating experiment firsthand.
Wow. He was walking the walk, wasn't he? Putting his philosophy into action, even in his final moment.
Exactly. Proving that the soul can be strong and calm even as the body's shutting down. That's real courage.
It's such a powerful message for us today, don't you think? To face our fears with grace and hold on to our convictions, even when things get tough.
It's really inspiring, and it makes his final words in the Phaedo even more powerful, don't you think?
Remind me what he says again.
He tells his students, "Don't forget to live a good life, for that is the greatest good." Simple words, but coming from a man about to take his last breath, it hits you right in the gut.
It really does make you think about what's truly important. Living each day with intention. Focusing on what really matters.
Okay, so before we wrap up, we have to talk about this one part in Phaedo that always blows my mind.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Socrates' description of the earth. It's not what you'd expect.
Okay, now you have to tell me more. How does he describe it?
He basically says that the earth is this massive, colorful sphere.
Okay, I mean, so far so good.
And that we humans are living in these huge hollows on its surface, like at the bottom of a giant, vibrant ocean.
Whoa. That's not in any textbook, that's for sure.
Right. It's this crazy mix of cosmology, philosophy, mythology almost. And he goes on to describe this other world that exists beyond our own, purer, more perfect.
It's like he's trying to bridge the gap between the physical world we know and this other, more spiritual realm that's beyond our grasp.
And that's what I love about Phaedo. It's this wild blend of logic and imagination. You're learning about philosophical arguments, but then bam, you're hit with these almost poetic images.
It's like he's reminding us that there's always more to discover, more to learn, both about the universe and about ourselves.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of philosophy, right? It pushes us to question our assumptions, embrace the unknown, and never stop exploring.
Socrates' final words really drive that home, don't they? When he tells his students to always seek virtue and wisdom. It's like he's saying the real reward in life isn't just about being comfortable or having fun. It's about living a life of meaning, a life well lived. Yeah, he's really challenging us, isn't he? It's not about taking the easy road, but striving for something more, something that truly matters.
It really makes you think, What does it actually mean to live a well-lived life? Is it about fame, fortune, or is it something deeper? How we treat others, the impact we have on the world around us?
It's a question philosophers have been wrestling with forever. And what I love about Phaedo is that it gives us this framework for thinking about it. It helps us figure out our own values, what we prioritize in life.
Definitely. And that's what makes these deep dives so great. It's not just about dusting off some ancient text. We're tapping into these timeless questions, questions that still matter today, maybe even more so now than ever.
It's mind-blowing how these ideas from thousands of years ago
Mm,
can still feel so relevant, so insightful,
I know, right? And you know what else strikes me about Phaedo?
What's that?
Even though Socrates is discussing these really heavy topics, death, the soul, eternity, he does it with a touch of humor. He's serious, but he's not afraid to be playful too.
He does kind of remind me of that wise, funny friend we all have. The one who gets you thinking, but doesn't take themselves too seriously.
Yes, exactly. It makes you feel like you're part of the conversation, like you're right there with Socrates and his students trying to puzzle it all out together.
And maybe that's what makes a deep dive like this so powerful.
Hmm.
It's not just about cramming in information. It's about engaging in a dialogue,
Yeah.
expanding our minds, our perspectives.
100%. And hopefully sparking a little of that philosophical curiosity in all of us.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Plato's Phaedo, any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Let's remember Socrates' famous words. The unexamined life is not worth living. It's a challenge to never stop questioning, to keep seeking truth, wisdom, even when it's hard.
Because at the end of the day, it's in those moments of searching, of grappling with the big questions, that we really discover who we are, right?
Absolutely. And that's a journey worth taking.